Please welcome our next speaker, Shawn Dorward, a Microsoft MVP and practice manager. Today, he will be presenting Dynamics GP Life Hacks, tips and tricks to save you time. Please stick around after Shawn's session for a live Q&A.
Well, hello there, everyone. Thank you so much for being here for our session on Dynamics GP Life Hacks. And I want to say a very special thank you to everyone at DynamicsCon, both the organizers and the participants and the speakers, because this wave one of 2020 has just been awesome. I know there's been a lot of content. Hang in there. We got some cool GP stuff to share, and we'll get right to it. I wanted to just take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Shawn Dorward. I am a practice manager at Dynamic Consulting. I'm also a Microsoft MVP for business applications. I absolutely love what I do for a living. I'm fortunate enough to get paid for what I do because I thoroughly enjoy helping customers get the most out of their ERP system. So much, I write about it. My personal blog site, lifehacks365.com. I feel certain if you are at this session, you not only will appreciate some of that content, but you will also appreciate some of my Excel tips. There's a great Excel tip out there for automatically highlighting a row. Check it out. Let me know if you've used it, or feel free to drop me a line and let me know if you like it or you don't like it. So first thing on the list, before we even get started, whoa, I better stop. I almost got ahead of myself already. So very, very important for a life hack session. If you've never been to one, welcome. If you have been to one, you know that this tends to go a little on the fast side. By design, these tips are meant to get your brain thinking and your wheels spinning about some cool things you could do to save yourself time and be more efficient. All of this information has references either to another blog, whether it's mine or a colleague of mine or a fellow MVP, and all of this information will be available to you as the conference concludes via a slide deck so that you can have all these links and all the information for reference. Feel free to take notes, but I will tell you, we're gonna get this going real quick. So there we go. Welcome to Life Hacks. First things first, add custom website to Dynamics GP. When you log into GP, you're going to see at the top here, Intelligent Cloud Insights. You have your user's homepage, which kind of looks maybe a little nicer than mine does. But this Intelligent Cloud Insights, by design, out of the box, this is surfacing Microsoft's landing page for Business Central. You can change this. Really easy to do. You add these three lines to your DexINI file. And your DexINI file is in your data folder. And you just add those three lines at the bottom. Now, mine in the slide deck shows equals and then my URL for my personal blog site. So you may not want to put my blog site, although that would be super cool and a big compliment to me, but maybe you want to put your Power BI dashboard there. So find a better purpose for yourself and your team members. This is by installation. So if you make the change for you and anybody else uses this DexINI, it's going to make the change. If you're not on the most modern version of GP, my buddy David has a blog on how to do this throughout other versions as well. So let's give it a shot. Let's go ahead. We copied that over. I'm going to paste it into the bottom of my DexINI. And I have to just throw these little enters in here to separate the lines because it doesn't copy over very well. And I'm going to just close my DexINI file, save that. I don't even have to restart. I just come back out of that view and then go into that Intelligent Clouds Insight. And just like that, fingers crossed, bam! Now I have my website up there so you can see the cool stuff that I post pretty often, or it can be anything you want. So there's a great little tip. Here's an example of me surfacing a Power BI dashboard from the surface right into Dynamics GP. Pretty cool. I also want to mention something that I think is pretty fascinating. I've been focusing a lot about accessibility here recently, and I want to just mention something I think is interesting. So there's a new forum, dynamicsusers.net, with a GP track in there. And I posted something out there because there's a lot of information around the web about how we can increase the font size in GP. Increase the font size in GP. And really, there are a couple different ways. It's predominantly dependent upon Windows 10 or whatever your operating system is. But check that out for that information at dynamicsusers.net. But I wanted to point this out when you run a report, and I think this is pretty helpful. And if I come into just anywhere in GP, and I'm going to go to account, and I'm going to pick an account, and I'm going to print it. Now, when I print it, and we'll get into these options here in a minute, notice that looks pretty readable to me. Yours may not look like that. Yours may have a default setting here down to 100, which is a little harder to read. Well, just like that setting that we just talked about for the web page, this is a change in that same DexINI file, and the magnify screen output by default is set to 100, and you can change it. So if you're on a high-res monitor and you want that to be zoomed in all the time, you can go ahead and change that very easily so that this magnify defaults to this. Again, that's for anybody using this install. That's another great life hack. So let's come back to our slide deck. That little green dollar sign in the top corner indicates that what I'm about to show you is from a paid product. David Musgrave, a GP MVP, writes a very, very powerful administrative tool, GP Power Tools. Very affordable, but there's some end user functionality in there as well. And I love this one as an accountant. And it's called Remember Window Position and Size. So I'm just going to talk about this. There is a trial you can get, and it's very easy to do. So if I have an account and I'm doing maybe an account reconciliation, so I'm going to open up my accounts and oops, wonder why I can't hit summary there. That's okay. We'll just go into the inquiry and pull that up. And I have my account maintenance window over here, and then this maybe opens up here, and I'll pull up that same account to give you an idea here. I don't want that window there, I want it next to it. And then when I open up the details of this, see what happens here. It opens up where I want it, and it even extended the length of the window. This window by default is kind of this size, and it's going to open right here. Look what happens. Because I moved it, it remembers what I did. It's going to put the window right back where I left it last time and keep the same size. So for windows that you're constantly dragging down, that may not seem like a lot, but it really is. Check out David's GP Power Tools for that little tip. Not sure why my summary and budgets weren't linking. Let me know in the chat what you think that might be all about, why those summary and budget buttons weren't active. Interesting. Also want to bring up another life hack here. This is if you do inventory in GP, you can now import and export your stock counts from an Excel file. Yay! I know, this is fantastic. I tested it out a few times. It works very well. Certainly a whole lot easier than keying things in over and over again. What's even better about this is you can link that or integrate from any kind of handheld or barcode that captures that information. So a handheld device or a barcode reading device. So if you're doing stock count and you're scanning a barcode and you're just putting in 17 and it captures it in a CSV file, you can easily turn that into an Excel file and import that in. I love this. Check it out. This just came out last fall in the 2020 Wave 2. I think they're called Wave 2 for GP, but the 2020 release 18.3. Love it. Check that out. This came out a couple versions ago, hiding inactive checkbooks. I work with many customers all over the country, all over the globe, actually, and I'm seeing this. We've retired some checkbooks, we've changed banks, and they're still kind of muddying up the field to play for us when we go through our inquiry. Real easy to do, as you can see on the screenshot here in the financial module under checkbook. Go to the lookup and then exclude inactive accounts, and real important, set that bugger as your default so that next time you come in and you're looking up things, you only see the active checkbooks. It doesn't get rid of them. They're still there. They're just by default out of your view. Sweet. I love that. You can also change the ribbon style. I've seen some folks have real valuable needs for this. Under the Dynamics GP user preferences, now what you're seeing here on the first side is what the modern client looks like for GP with a more Microsofty ribbon, and that is very cool. But you could change this in there. You could change it under the window command display section, the action pane or action pane strip, or the menu bar. And there's an example of what they look like. It does sometimes move buttons on Windows, which might be helpful depending on, if you have an old macro that works very well, but things have moved because of that ribbon. Try changing the ribbon style. Check that out. Next up, autocomplete corrections. Now, okay, so we know all about autocomplete. I'm just going to run into my vendor cards, there we are. I'm going to run into my vendor card, and I'm going to type in Dynamics Con Rocks, but I'm going to misspell it. And if I do that, every time I start typing in that window and it matches this value, even though that's an incorrect value, it's still going to present it. And so what we could do is real easily is right click on it and choose remove from list. Now that makes life a whole lot easier, gets rid of those where we're tripping over our own fingers. But I want to talk about this window a little bit more. If you have a lot of activity in your system, you've been using it for a while, you might notice that your windows open a little slower than they normally would or than they used to. And sometimes, well, there are many reasons that could be. I would first take a look at your remember settings for your autocomplete. And we can easily do that under GP user preferences. And right here, autocomplete is a button. And the reason I say to check here is because by default, look at this. This is by default. It's going to capture 10,000 entries, up to 10,000 per lookup. There's no reason to do that. So if you have thousands of vendors and you've tried typing them several times, you may want to visit this. You can hit remove entries and it's going to wipe all of them out, all of that memory out, and it's going to start with a clean list. What you can also do is say, hey, remove unused entries after 30 days, and we'll set this at a max of maybe like 20 even. So now if you type in something today and you don't use it for 45 days, it's not going to muddy up your list if you like to use the autocomplete. That's a great one. I love that. A little bit of help there on the slides. Oh, also scheduling checklinks. So a little bit of word of caution with this first. Don't go do this without taking some necessary precautions. Make sure that you understand the implications of checklinks, both from a timing perspective, the benefit versus the risk involved in running checklinks, and also the system performance issues that it could cause depending on where you're running them. But if you get past all of those hurdles and you feel like running checklinks pretty regularly is a good idea, and for the most part, I would agree, you can now schedule them. Brand new with the release that happened last fall, October 2020, you can schedule your checklinks. Very cool. You can pick the time of day. You can pick a location for reporting, and you can run multiple different areas for checklinks. That's pretty cool. I love that one. I get this question a lot talking about field level security. It sounds maybe like it's a little different than what I think is a good entry point for folks to start using field level security. I get this question a lot. Can I remove the delete button from a batch window? And the reality is that often the approach for that is that we want to do it through security. And we can't really do that through security. But if we look at this batch window, we can, for certain users, remove the delete button, or maybe better yet, remove the post button. And you can use field level security to do just that. It's by user and by company. There are many other things it can do, but one of them is disabling buttons. Another is requiring a password to maybe change a sensitive field, a very critical field, maybe in your account maintenance window, maybe that allow account entry checkbox in the account entry window. Maybe you want to put a password on that. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a complicated password, top secret, call the FBI. It could just be something simple like 1234, because you just want to kind of be, shocked in the keyboard, if you will, if you accidentally click that button. Lots of options in field level security, pretty easy to set up. It's under administration, setup, system, and field level security. From in here, we just create a simple ID, and then we use the lookup to drive this. We're going to use the lookup. We're going to go to Dynamics GP. We're going to pick the account maintenance window in this example. And then from there, we're going to say, what do we want to do on the account maintenance window? We want to password the window. So in this case, we use field level security to password the window, which I think is interesting as well. Maybe you want to do that on the credit hold checkbox for a customer. Not another a pretty good example, I think. But check this out, field level security. Lots of articles out there on the web. Feel free to reach out to me or drop something in the chat here and let me know what you use field level security for. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Let me know. I want to know. What else? So here's an example, field level security, where we're assigning it to the user and the company, which I think is awesome because you may have different rules across companies. And there's the example. We clicked on account and it's asking for the password. There we go. What next? Okay, posting through GL for transactions. This is in the posting setup under tools, setup, posting. And notice here in the screenshot, we've switched this to the purchasing module. So what we're talking about here is for purchasing transactions in this example. And we can now, with GP 2018 R2 and forward, we can post individual transactions through the general ledger. So instead of posting and then having to post a financial batch as well, it will now post a financial batch for you if you check this checkbox. I like this. I like this a lot. Pretty good reason to, many good reasons to check that box. But if you don't know it's there, you might overlook just like auto create deposits. This came out a long time ago, several years ago, but still seeing many customers posting a cash receipts batch and then forgetting, let's be honest, forgetting to go over to the deposit and create the deposit that matches the cash receipt. When the likelihood, and in most real world scenarios, what we're creating in the cash receipts batch is identical to the kind of stack of checks in the deposit slip that we take to the bank. So whatever you create in a cash receipt, if you go into setup company options, all the way to the bottom, there's that magic checkbox to automatically post cash receipts. Whenever you post something in cash receipts, if you post a batch and it's for $10,000, it will create one deposit for $10,000. If you post one transaction, if you post 10 transactions, not in a batch, it's going to think, oh, you took those to the bank one at a time. So I'm going to create one deposit just like you did for the cash receipt. So it just mirrors that approach. I love it. Take advantage of it. Pretty helpful little life hack there. Updating user date automatically. If you leave GP open overnight, why? But I digress. Leave a comment in the chat. Let me know why you might do that. Do you just forget? That's okay. There's some tools out there that can help with that. But if you do and you get the pop-up to update the user date, do you want to update the user date? And it kind of hangs out down there. Maybe you don't see it. You can simply go into the professional service tools library, which is free. If you don't have it installed in your system, check with your partner. It shouldn't cost you anything. Go in and check that checkbox to update user date. You just make sure that suppress change date dialog is on as well, because then you won't get the pop up there either. I love that one. This one I learned myself a few years back, and this is all about multiple companies in GP. And if you create something in one company, maybe a chart of account code, you have to remember to log out and log back in the other company and create that same GL account. The same is true for vendors and customers. If you have that sync between companies, more likely than not, GL kind of comes to mind as a more likely use case scenario here. But hey, this is available for GL accounts, customers, and vendors. So you go into the professional service tools library, real easy, click the PM master table trigger, and you see in the screenshot there, we could say, if a change is made in this database, we want to replicate that change in this database, and we can include accounts, vendors, or customers. And so if you're in this situation where you have to create the GL accounts across companies, problem solved. Just take a little bit long lunch. Don't tell anyone else about it. You'll be good to go. What's next? Workflow. So if you've ever tried to develop workflow in Dynamics GP using the condition editor, it can seem/feel a little restricted. There is a switch you can put in the DexINI file that we talked about earlier on today in this session called Query Designer all functionality equals true. And what this does is it opens up the developer version of the condition editor, which really branches out and gives you all of the options you're looking for. For example, if the purchase account is this GL account, you want to route something a certain way, you could do that. Or maybe if it's this state, I want this individual to approve it, or if it's this territory, those kind of things are available in the developer condition editor. It's a little bit different of an experience, but it is an option you can use. So if you've gone down the route of setting up routings for your workflow and you hit a roadblock because you couldn't figure out that option in the condition editor. Check this out. See if it helps you. Okay, what's next? Recurring batches. Whoo, I love this one too, especially because I used to be in AP years ago. If you go into purchasing and then batches, now when you have a recurring batch in payables, we'll do this monthly. You now have the option to use the last day of the month. So these complications come into play when it's a shorter month versus a longer month. This checkbox now, it does the date validation for you and adjusts automatically to the last day of the month after you post it. This came out in GP 2018 R2. If you don't know what's there, you might be on GP 18 R2 or newer, and you didn't realize it was there. Check it out. This is great for, recurring rent transactions and those kind of things. Do you use this? Any challenges with it? Let me know. Throw something in the comments there. I'd love to hear it. Sales doc, in the sales transaction entry window, I want to make sure everyone knows that you can print and email those documents at the same time. I have a link here about specifically how to do it, but I love this time-saving tip, especially because now we may not have as much room to forget to actually send it, which is kind of important if you want to get paid. So check that out. Be sure to let me know if you have troubles with that. Also, relatively new, not too long ago, and I used to hear this all the time, and if you're in GP, you probably have experienced this yourself. There just was not enough room in the payables transaction entry description window. And now we have the option under purchasing and payables setup to enable the long description on the payables transaction entry window. So here's an example here. This came out in the 2019 fall release. Here's the normal description, and here is the long description. So you now have the option, I think it's 100 up to 200 characters to be able to include that on your transaction. Okay, that's the long description. By the way, the long description does flow in the payable subsidiary. It does not post to general ledger. So keep that in mind when incorporating this into your business process. Okay, great. Next up, invoice hold. So we all know how to put a vendor on hold. And if you don't, real easy to do on the vendor card. But don't put the vendor on hold if you just dispute or have questions about one particular invoice. You can actually continue to key that invoice in the GP. You don't have to hold it in a file folder anywhere, and remember to do it later. That way it'll show in your aging too. Make sure it gets in the system, but then go into purchasing transaction holds, pull up that vendor and put that specific invoice on hold. I like this little life hack. It's kind of hidden in GP. If you don't know it's there, you may overlook it and you may just kind of hold the invoice on your desk and keep it in a file until that gets resolved. But this is a great way to get it in the system. That's invoice specific holds. Because of that, because we have that situation where we might be putting invoices on hold and not just the vendor, there is a way that you can go into purchasing payables transactions, as I'm showing here on the screenshot, and create a new smart list favorite where the hold column is equal to yes, so that you can always easily see the list of invoices across all vendors, even though my example is just showing one vendor, what invoices are on hold. Really, really helpful. I absolutely love it. Also wanted to point out, brand new as of fall 2019, you can now use prior month, next month, prior period, and next period in your date searches for Smart List. Again, it's kind of one of those things, if you've been just the muscle memory, you go ahead and you change those dates every month because it doesn't change automatically. You have the enter date field value selected. Go ahead and try it out. Prior month, next month, prior period, and next period. Very, very helpful, especially for us accountants. I love this one. What took so long? I don't know. I wonder. Do you use that? Do you have any trouble with that? Let me know in the chat. I like it. Let me know. Navigation lists for fixed assets. Man, navigation lists don't get a lot of love, but I do really, really like them. So let me just show you what I mean by navigation lists. So first off, I'm in purchasing. I'm going to switch to financial. And when I switch to financial and my content boxes get displayed here, my menu boxes, I'm anchored on financial here. If I look below it, these are sort of most of them are navigation lists, most of them. And so if you look at this, I can see I've got an account list, or maybe general ledger batches, so that instead of going into the batch window, I could look at those in here. But if I click on assets, this is going to take me into the fixed asset navigation list. This is super helpful for situations where, let me see, maybe you have to bulk retire. Maybe you're moving buildings, or you sold a line of business or something like that, and you have to bulk retire things. You typically would just go into each card and initiate the retire. But here we can actually click on multiple items and depreciate them, sure, and we could transfer them in bulk, but we can also retire them, as I mentioned. So this is a great way, using navigation lists, to perform actions in bulk. I use fixed assets as an example, but navigation lists are in all the other modules as well. So be sure to check them out. I think they're very helpful. They're not extremely customizable like a smart list is, but they really help for bulk actions, and I love it for that. So check that out. What's next? Account rollups. Whoo, baby. Let's look at account rollups. Oh, by the way, if you're on navigation lists and you want to get back to the financial, you might be inclined to just click financial here. But like I said, we have to click the top there, and then it'll take us back. Okay, next up, account rollups. I love this feature, and this is super helpful for those situations where you want to get, let's see, maybe you want to know the balance of all of your wage accounts, instead of running a trial balance and getting them that way, or running a management reporter report. We can do and design account rollups. So let's go into account rollup here under inquiry into finance. Now this is, I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call this salaries. I don't have one in there. I'm going to create it. I'm going to come over here so it makes it a little easier to see. And here in column 1, we can say this is actual, and notice we can choose budget or calculated. So we're going to do that. We're going to go to the next one, and let's see, we want actual for our account, and this is wages. So let's just grab several of our wage accounts, which are, I think, my 5,000 series. So I'll do 5220 to 59.99, and we'll insert that. They don't have to be, oops, I got to actually pick one. They don't have to be, it doesn't have to be just one. It can be a range. We'll do to 5,700. Insert that. So I have those accounts in there, and then maybe I want to restrict it by division, maybe. And so I'll just say all of the 000 and insert that. You kind of get the idea there. As you see in the restrictions, we can get pretty complicated with this. So we're going to now, let's see. Oops, I need to change my columns. I want 4 columns. That's why it wasn't letting me move down. So I have my actual, and then I'm going to do, let's see, last year, previous year, and then we're going to do a budget. And then with budget, it gets a little bit different. I'm going to have to come into the selection, pick the magnifying glass, tell it which budget I want to use in that comparison. And then column 4, we can say variance, and we can create a calculated. Again, a little bit different than the actuals in previous year. Let's hit the blue arrow, and we're going to go over here and we're going to say this is actual, and we're going to insert it, and actual minus budget. Don't judge my math. And we'll insert it. So that's the formula, C1 minus C3. Easy enough. We'll hit OK. And then we'll look at the inquiry down here. So this is what this looks like now. I don't have much data in there, as you can see, just some budget. But there it is. Now I can look at account roll up for salaries in all those accounts and divisions, etc. And all of these links work like a typical account window, which I think is really cool. And we can then go into the account and keep drilling all around. Do you use account rollups? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Salary is a good example. Maybe you want to have assets, maybe accumulated depreciation across all types. Pretty cool. I love it. couple slide groups there. Analysis groups. Analysis groups are a lot of, they're very powerful. They're simple but effective. And this is a great way to not have to add new GL accounts when you want to have kind of an optional tracking. So I think a great example to give you some perspective here is if you have a vehicle expense GL account and then you want to go one step further, you want to capture vehicle expense by vehicle. Do you really need a new segment or a new GL account for that? Well, if you use analysis groups, you can set up a group ID, in this case called vehicles, assign it to that account, make it a requirement or optional. There's options in there. And then you can even go by vehicle and require the user entering the AP invoice to tell you which vehicle it is, still posting the same GL account. So you're not muddying up your financials, but you can use out of the box smart lists available, which I have right here. I also have a custom view that I threw together that you're free to use. But in the smart list, it gets a little confusing. I didn't name these, so don't hold me accountable for it. But we're calling them analysis groups over in GP, but in the smart list is called Multidimensional Analysis, which is an old name that it used to have, but that's where you'll see those. So we see the transactions posted to the GL account and that optional or required tag or dimension, if you will, as well. So you can very easily create a pivot table or whatever it is to get that detail. Very helpful for fund accounting, maybe a little makeshift project accounting here for detailed on a specific GL account. I use this all the time. Check it out. Custom links. I love this one, man. I have a blog series on this. I could write a blog probably once a month about custom links. I love this. Not many people know it. Not many people take advantage of it, but custom links are under administration setup, company, and custom links. And what custom links does is it gives us a custom link on certain windows in GP. So we're going to scroll down here and there's custom link. I have one set up and I'm going to show you this here. I have one set up for UPS tracking. So if I come into modify, it's already pre-populated, but this would be empty if I picked new. So if I pick new, you'll see I can have custom links, on checkbooks, credit card, currency, customer, employee, exchange rate, item, salesperson, tracking number, and since I read all the rest, vendor. And this is really helpful because what we did, I have two things that I use this often for. One is for tracking within GP. So let's look at that. I set this up and I'm going to go to modify. And so all I did is I said the prompt was tracking number. Now this tracking number is the tracking number that lives on the sales invoice under maybe user defined. I'm not sure. We'll go there in a minute. But I specifically am saying this is for when the shipping method is ground. You probably would want to set this up and call it UPS if you're going to really control it this way. And here's the internet URL. Now this is the prefix to the URL when you go to ups.com and you track your package. So there's naturally one available for USPS, FedEx, all of the carriers. That's for UPS. So now if I go into sales and I go to my transaction entry because I didn't post this invoice yet, and I'm going to jump to my last invoice, which is where I have it. Notice that this is ground. And if I go to user defined, this is the tracking number that Checklinks was referring to when it said tracking number. So the data is in this field. In that tracking number, I'm going to go tracking number, UPS tracking. That UPS tracking value there is what I put in the custom link. That's my name. You could call this Shawn's Cool UPS tracking if you want to. Why not? But anyway, so I clicked that link. Here we go. Let's stop. I'm going to go back and do that again. Okay, so I clicked that link. Let's let that open up. And just like that, lickety split, there is my tracking results. So no longer do I have to go out, copy the tracking, go out, go to the website, put in the tracking number. It just click, boom, done. I love it. That's just one use case for custom links. Another one that I love that we're not going to have time to get actually set up here, and it might be a little complicated too, is on the customer card. You can simply create one called calls to customer. And so if you put in my case, I used the address field on the customer internet information, and I put their phone number in there. And so on the customer card, I could just go to customer, click the link, and it will pop up Teams and call the customer. This is helpful on the vendor as well. If you manage AP, I love this. So you no longer have to copy it out, go find the number, copy it out, and go into the other. Just click a link, boom, use those custom links. I love it. Here's the screenshot. If you want to give this a shot, you see it's customer maintenance window in the internet information. And I put it down here. You have to put that little tell colon and then the plus sign. I think the space is important. Make sure you keep that in there. And then the phone number, just like that. So use that example. Try it. Do you use this? I love this. Wow. It saves me a lot of time. I don't use it for customers near as much as I do for vendors. And that's the example of how from a sales transaction, we could just instantly click the link and call the customer. This little life hack is by Steve Endo, a Microsoft MVP. He wrote this free little chunk file, little piece of code to speed up the inquiry windows in GP for purchasing and sales. Now, it doesn't actually speed up your existing windows. In fact, what it does is it creates a brand new window. I have the link there. I'll paste it in the chat. Be sure to follow Steve on Twitter and thank him for this. He makes it available completely free. Very fast, very helpful. As you start typing a vendor ID, the list automatically sorts everything out, or the amount, it automatically sorts it out. Makes research a breeze. Love it. And it's also available in sales as well. So let's keep rolling. Bank Rec, brand new in 2018. You can now sort by, instead of just typing dates, you can sort by payment or by deposit. You see that little option there in the sort. What that means is by payment amount or by deposit amount. So no longer are you having to scroll through that long list and try to keep your eyes from bugging out to see that number. You could just sort of ascending or descending as see as the option to the right of it. Pick by payment if you're searching payment, or pick by deposit. That's really cool if you do bank reconciliations. If you're not using that, check it out. Big time saver. Speaking of bank reconciliations, if you ever, a lot of folks still print these out, the reports out, or save in PDF. I have nothing wrong with that, but just keep in mind there's a little bit of a myth, because it used to be this way, I think, that you had to do that for a bank reconciliation and that you probably you might be thinking that you could never get those reports again, is what the myth is. But that's not true. Under bank posting journals in the financial modules that I have on the screen here, bank deposit journal, you can get bank transaction journal, reconciliation journal. So all of those you can recreate. Now, the one catch is you need to know the audit trail code, which you can easily get from any of the transactions associated with it. They are all available in there. Check that out. Love it. Little green $ means this is a paid tip. So real easy. If you own Smart List Builder by E1 Solutions, I want you to know about this great little gem bonus feature for Smart List Builder owners. And that is under Tools, and it's called Table Finder. So if you've ever built reports or you are trying to build a report and you want to know an easy path to find where that data lives and what the field names are, what this tool does is it surfaces the tables that are associated to the window you're on. So the trick is, if I'm writing a report and I feel like it's vendor related, maybe I'll start with the vendor window and see the list of tables is here. All the fields associated with it makes it a breeze to figure out what tables to use and what fields to use when building reports. So thanks E1 for that little gem. Love it. If you own Smart List Builder, check it out. It's just included. No, there's no additional cost. There's not. It's that you own it. Okay. Posting setup. This is something I really want to talk about. So administration setup, posting. So let's go in there. Administration setup, posting. Now, when I was in account, you recall I went and I picked the account and I hit print. And what happened was this report destination window popped up and it said, do you want to go to the screen or the printer? Now, this destination I can change these by default under user preferences, but certain report destinations, so for example, if we come into, let's cancel that, we'll come into financial, and we can say, okay, certain transactions, certain origins as they're called, have options for the action or the intent of the post or print action. So if we look at general entry, you'll see down here under reports. Now, when you come in here, be cautious. If you don't belong in here, don't come in here. It is a sensitive window. It could mess up some things in your environment. So if you do have access to this, be super cautious and take my word of caution. However, and remember, these changes are for everyone. So if I wanted to general posting journal, you notice that's the report and it's set to question mark, which means it's going to ask me what my destination is. If I want it to always be to the screen, I can choose that very modern looking monitor there, and it will be to the screen or to the printer or even to a text file where I can append and replace. So mine is just set to empty. That's fine. But this is super helpful for the post payables transactions. Maybe a little bit different of an example. So we've got 5 in here if I knew how to count. We've got 5 report options. Do you hit cancel, 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 or maybe you hit print, cancel, cancel, print, cancel, something like that when you post stuff? If you don't use the reports, just simply come in here and uncheck them. You no longer will get that option. Saves a lot of time. Believe it or not, I've seen folks have that cancel, cancel, print, cancel in their procedure manual. If you're doing that, you don't have to. You could turn them off like this. I love that. Make sure you take advantage of setting your posting setup the right way. Another little green dollar sign. This is by Mark Polino. If you run a historical age trial balance and they take a long time, check out Mark's tool. It's very affordable. I think it's like under $500. Don't quote me on that. But it runs in Excel. It's got uses stored procedures and it runs super fast compared to in GP. Or if you're taking the historical age trial balance from GP and you're trying to export it to Excel, this is another great solution to that problem because it lives in Excel. If you want to get it in Excel, start in Excel, as I always say. All right, so next up, and one of my absolute favorites, because you're probably a lot like me in the sense that you use SmartList all the time. And I love these next couple tips, our last couple tips as we wind down here, because they're about SmartList and how to get a little bit more power out of them. So first things first, every SmartList has a column in the search called any field. And it literally means if you choose that in your filter, it literally means it's going to search any field in that data set. So number one, be cautious. If you've got a million transactions, probably don't want to do that. But if you're trying to find a certain dollar amount, maybe add other criteria in here as well to restrict it. But using the any field can be helpful. So you notice in mine, any field contains Allen. It returned these two, where the Allen was in the vendor ID and in the street name. So that's any field. It's not a real field. It's sort of like a wild card, if you will, which is what this blog series that I wrote is all about on my personal blog site. I'll put the link over there in the chat. Let me know if you use wildcards in your SmartList, because there are only 4 search definitions. It's a little restricting if you really think about it, but wildcards can really open that up. So next up is the wildcard percentage sign. This, if you notice in my search here, I'm using this in the middle, and it's really giving me the flexibility to say everything starting with 000 dash and ends with a dash 01. You see my results returns everything. That's percentage sign. Use it in any field. But it's a placeholder. It's an anything field in that specific column. The next one, the next wild card here is the underscore. So this is anything in that specific character space. So in this case, RGL segment, if you note, is 4 digits long, and I've got anything, but the second digit must be 1, and the next 2 can be anything. So if you see my results, my second digit is always 1, and it doesn't matter what the others are. That's the underscore. Now, I'm using accounts here as my example because it was sort of easy to articulate, but this can be used in any. And the last one is the brackets. This is showing a single space or. So here it's saying the first character can be a 1 or a 2. The second character can only be a 0. The second character can only be a 0. The third only a 0, and etc. But so this is not the first character can be a 12, because it can't, right? 12 would be 1 and then 2. It's 1 or 2 in the first character. So that's the or in a single statement. Real quick, you can use these for more than one search definition. You're not limited to the top one. See, I've got those there. So now I've got everything matching my search criteria. Love it, love it, love it. Last one before I meet you over in the Q&A section. This time of year, don't forget to close your fiscal year. You can close your fiscal year regardless of your audit still open, because you can journal entry to a closed year, and it does all the fancy account posting for you. So this is under financial general ledger setup, posting to history. That option has to be turned on if you need to post a journal entry to last year and the year's closed. This will save you time. Close that year. Don't make accidental entries in that year. And if you really do need to reverse the closing, that is an option for you. That is right there at the bottom of the year-end closing window. Hopefully you don't need that, but hopefully those two will help you. I hope you enjoyed the session. I look forward to hearing you over in the Q&A section. Thanks for being with us here at Dynamics.
Hey there, everyone. Well, I was enjoying that music. That was pretty cool. Pretty fun stuff. I hope everyone enjoyed our little life hack session there. I'm going to put a link down there in the chat, and we'll for the slide for the what am I talking about here? For the what's it called? The presentation, the slideshow. If you'd like a copy of the slideshow, there's a link. It should work. And I hope you enjoyed our little life hack session here. So good to see everyone over in the chat. I'm trying to keep up with it. Looks like some folks may have learned a thing or two. That's really exciting. And I'm really, really glad to hear that. So if I could, let's just go to one of the first questions that I saw that I captured from the Q&A session, which was, does the Zoom just work on reports printed to the screen, or can you enlarge the other windows in GP? And unfortunately, the answer is, although that tip for the switch to automatically zoom in, which helps me a lot, it is just for printed reports to the screen. It doesn't change the output or any of the window sizes. However, there are a couple little tips and tricks to help improve from an accessibility aspect, the font size in Dynamics GP. There's some good conversation over at dynamicsuser.net about it. Also, David Musgrave has part of his GP Power Tools, an enhancement that works. Don't forget the minimal effort required just by changing in your Windows 10 settings. You know, most people have more than one monitor, so you can have your font zoomed in 150 or 125. That helps quite a bit, at least for me, and maybe that will for you too. And so that's a little bit of feedback regarding that. Thanks for the question. Another question that came in regarding, when we were talking about the ability to post transactions not just to the GL, but through the GL, was what the difference was in the window. There was kind of a subset of those options. And I know if I'm understanding the question correctly, the top portion of that posting setup window is referring to the batch portion. So when you post in batch from the purchasing module. And that little bit of a dip down and that drop down is referring to transaction posting. So that, I think, answers your question. Amber Bell, I know my friend Amber's here. Certainly, if I was misinterpreting the question or you have anything to add, please feel free to add that in there. So let's see. What else do we got here? Thank you for all the compliments. I hope I'm really, really loving the love. I miss seeing everybody in person, but this is a good alternative, I think. And I'm having a great conference. I hope you are too. Let's talk about one more question that I see here is can you explain the difference between MDA or analysis groups in analytical accounting. And this is a great question. This is a great question. Thank you for asking it. And I'm in a room by myself. No one's here yelling at me, telling me to stop talking. So I hope I don't get a little too opinionated here. But just quite honestly, they're definitely different. And I think at some point Microsoft's intention was to deprecate multidimensional analysis or analysis groups or MDA, and kind of put that on the, off the product and replace it with analytical accounting. And the reality is that analytical accounting does so much more than what MDA does. However, there is an incredible amount of, let's call them quirks, features that come along with it. There's a lot of maintenance. It can get really, really tricky sometimes from a maintenance perspective. It is sort of a good go-to when you're talking about grant management, that kind of thing, because if you're very controlled in what you're doing in analytical accounting and you do it well and you have someone who can dedicate their efforts to a repeatable routine and maintenance for analytical accounting, you'll be fine. So please don't take my apprehension as a reason to not use it. But I think I would peel back the layers just a little bit more and understand what it is you're trying to do. Because the reality is, so number one, if you're a consultant who wasn't familiar that analysis groups are still in GP because you may have been tipped off that it was going away, you might shuttle people to analytical accounting. So if your business requirements are met with multidimensional analysis codes or analysis groups, I know they make the naming so easy, then I would definitely steer you in that direction, because the burden that comes along with analytical accounting, I think the biggest burden to me is if you put it into GP, it's nearly impossible to remove it from GP. So once you have it in there, you're sort of stuck forever with the pain of having it in there if you find out you don't need it. Now that's not an all the time situation. So MDA does a lot of great things. It can be a required tag. The example we showed in there was vehicle expenses, and that's a real life example. People use that all the time. So thank you for that question. I hope that was helpful. There is a little bit of I want to throw one more thing in the mix there. That is management reporter. So you can't leverage MDA codes in management reporter. Am I right with that? Let me know in the comments if anybody knows of a way to do that with MDA codes. So another question. Thank you for that question, and I probably could talk more and more about that. I see the chat is just a flurry, and I'm loving it. So keep that conversation going. If I missed a question, please feel free to post it again, as you guys are running crazy. But I have another question here, which was, is there a way to reprint the purchase receipts update detail report? And I mentioned, I responded to that in the chat. I'm going to have to look into that, but I believe off the top of my head, that's one of those rare times where it's an in the moment report, but I'll dig into that. And if anybody else is familiar with a solution there, let me know, or let us know in the comments here in the chat. And a question here I'm seeing is, are most functions very different on BC from GP? That's a great question too. I'm not quite sure if there's an easy answer. I mean, GP is an ERP solution and BC is an ERP solution. The gap in functionality is slim to none between the two. It's just different. I like to use a car as an analogy there. I don't, just because I own my Honda, it doesn't mean I can't buy a Ford. They're both vehicles. They both do similar things. I just have preferences or different requirements of my own that I'm making that decision on. So in terms of functionality, the biggest gap, if that even is the way to say it, is the ISV space, because your very popular GP ISVs are slowly but not currently available in BC the same and effective way that they are in GP. And here we got a question with Smartphil. Is there a way to remove items from just certain window lookups? For example, let's say you delete a vendor, you don't want the vendor to keep appearing in the list. So Richard, I think you're talking about the autofill. And yes, if you put something there, you can clear everything out for the window itself or for all things, or you can right click in that lookup field, just right click in it, highlight the item that you don't want anymore. You should be able to right click on that, that entry and remove it from the list. I hope that answers your question. Okay, let's see what else. Everybody having a great conference? Did everybody check out that link for the slide deck if you want the slide deck? Let's see. People got rid of analytical counting. Power BI can report on MDA. Belinda most certainly reminds us that Power BI can create those reports. So if MD management reporter is your decision making for choosing between AA and MDA, don't let it stop you. Switch to Power BI. A lot of acronyms getting thrown around there. Okay, great. Any other questions for me? How's everybody doing? Everybody surviving well? Everybody enjoying their working from home experience? What do you think? You ready to get back out into the real world? I know I am. I know I am. Let's see. Tanya says you could do a paginated Power BI financial with MDA as well. So it looks like Tanya is right in line with Belinda there for reporting MDA codes in Power BI. I will check that out myself without a doubt. All right. Okay, so we're not seeing any more questions. Anything else? Did I miss anything? Did I miss anything? Okay, if I didn't miss any questions, I want to once again thank you. I miss you too, Tanya. I want to thank you all so very much for joining me here at this session, but even more importantly, for joining me here at DynamicsCon. Thank you so very much for taking the time to contribute in the chat. Check out the slide deck. Also, please don't forget all of the sessions will be available on YouTube next week. And even right now, you can look back at the schedule to see the sessions that occurred yesterday. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.